Welcome back, Drifters. So today what we're building a pulley system for our power rack. Now, we built this thing about a month or so ago because of this whole quarantine thing. And what we're going to be doing today is incorporating a pulley system so we can have both a upper and a lower pulley system. This is just going to make it so we can do pull downs and curls and tricep extensions and all those like small movements that we normally don't do with just regular barbells. I mean, barbells are great, but we like to add a little bit of variety in there. So that's what we're going to do today. So if I don't get it 100% right the first time out, check in the description. I'll be sure to update it completely when this is done. Sometimes we make mistakes as we're filming these things, so bear that in mind, but I'm going to try to get it as accurate as I possibly can. So here's the first thing that we're going to be using. It's just a 2-inch pulley, and in the bottom of it, it's got these holes here. Those are little quarter-inch holes, so we use a 1/4-inch size bolt for these. So the next one you're going to have to worry about is going to be this swivel pulley. It's very simple, but this thing's going to hang from the top, and it's going to give it a little bit of ability to move around. So when you're doing it, you don't have to necessarily be straight on it. You could be at an angle or do what you need to do for the ones going from the top. Now the swivel pulley is going to be held in by one of these. It's just a little eye bolt. So this is going to go through the very top bar, and this is going to hold onto that little swivel pulley. Now I'm using two different types of clamps here. So this is the first style of clamp. This is the typical one that you're going to see in most gyms. Of course, this wasn't designed for a gym, but it's going to be used for one and it'll work. This thing's rated for up to 400 pounds. We're not getting anywhere near that. Now, if you really wanted to go serious with it, you could get one of these. This thing is called a quick link, and it's rated all the way up to 1,800 pounds. That's way more than any of the pulleys are rated to. Each of the pulleys are rated to about 420 pounds, somewhere around there, 480 for the bigger ones. So realistically, this thing will never break, but at least not for what we're going to be using it for. Now for the cable, you're going to need these two little things. This piece here is going to be used to support the cable so it doesn't tear, and these are the little clamps that are going to hold it all together. It's a 1/8 cable clamp. And you're going to need 3 of these for each side. Now we're running 2 cables, so that means we need a total of 12 of these. As far as these go, I only am using about 2 of these because I'm only using 2 of the quick links. So if I was using this style of clamp, I wouldn't need to use this because it's already got something very similar. So now the only other thing you're going to need are going to be a bunch of these bolts. These here are 1/4-inch bolts. They're 4 inches long. You could go 4 1/4 just to give you that extra little bit, but this should be enough. But these are the right size that are going to fit through the holes on the pulley. You're also going to need one of these little spacers. These sleeves go on top of the 1/4-inch bolt. It's going to be held in with a nut, and this is going to help keep the cable in line, and it guides it. It just rolls nice and smooth, and that's what you want. So you're going to need a total of 3 bolts, 3 spacers. And then I just got a bunch of washers. And then last but not least, some little nylon lock nuts, because you always got to lock your nuts down. You don't want them getting lost. And of course, the most important part being the cable. This is a 1/8-inch vinyl coated cable, and basically all that does is going to help increase the longevity of it. But an 1/8 inch is rated up to 340 pounds. We're not going to be seeing numbers anywhere near that. So this should be plenty strong enough to do what we need it to, and that's what we're going to do. I'm going to cut it to the size that I need for this power rack. So if you built a power rack just like mine, I'll give you the dimensions I use, and these should get you really close. Otherwise, you're just going to have to measure and cut. Luckily, if you go to the hardware store, they can cut it for you there if you don't have a cutoff wheel. Then the other thing that we're going to need is going to be one of these loading pins. Now these things, I got this on Amazon. I think it was like $10, maybe it was $15. It wasn't expensive, and it's just designed to where you can load a bunch of weights on here. These even fit my concrete weights, so it's going to work for what we need it to. But it's got a nice little hook up here where we can hook it into, and this is going to sit on the bottom, and this is where the weights are going to ride on. So this is a very important piece. You could also just use chains and a clamp. But I just thought, I'm used to using these things, I may as well. It looks nice, and it's a little bit easier for storage and putting on and off the weights. Because using a chain's fine, but this would just be a little bit simpler. So we're going with this. So I guess the only thing left to do now is to get drilling. Luckily, all we need to do is drill a couple holes. We're using a 1/4-inch drill bit. Each of these pulleys is going to require 2 holes. So for first start, we're going to start up here, but I want to move it far enough away from the pull-up bar that I don't have to worry about damaging anything. So all I'm going to do is find a spot over here where I like it. I'm going to mark out 2 spots and then drill 2 holes. And then we'll be able to get this pulley mounted ready for the second one. Alright, so I have my holes marked. All I'm going to do now is just drill through the first hole and Hopefully I don't split the wood completely in half. So you may want to use a smaller drill bit to start, but I'm just gonna yeet it and go for it. We'll see what happens. Wish me luck. Okay, there we go. We're through on the first hole. So what I'm gonna do now is, since I have one hole drilled already, I'm gonna put a bolt through, hold the pulley up. That way I can make sure that when I drill the second hole, it's gonna be right where we want it to be, and I'm not chasing my tail with something that's missing. So I'm just gonna put a washer and a nut on top. There we go. That'll at least hold it in place, so that way we can get this thing finished. Okay, and now I can move this out of the way. There we go. Now all we gotta do is run another 4-inch bolt through. Should go right up through there. There she goes. Do a washer and a nut on top. So we'll tighten that down, but that's our first pulley done. Now to just do about 3 more of these and then the swivel one. So now in order to get this opposite side set up, I just need to measure the distance to make sure that they're about equal. It doesn't have to be perfectly equal, but we want to get it close because we don't want the cable having to like twist around in here. It'll just extend the cable life if it's straighter. So that's what we're going to try to do. I'm going to get this one drilled up and we'll move on to the next one. So what I did for measuring is I just took one of these little bolts. I put it up against the A-frame over here and it's literally that far apart. So I'm just going to use this to put my spacing for the second one. You could use a ruler, but you know, I like using bolts. They work. Alright, so now I'm just going to drill this hole. That's one down. Run the bolt through. Washer and nut. Boom. Alright, that's 2 down. So now that we got 2 up there, I just have to work on the bottom one here because this first set of pulleys is going to be for the lower pulley. Then we'll move on to doing the upper pulleys. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my precise measuring tool, figure out where the gap is, and then I'm going to mount the pulley to the outside because I want it facing to the outside so that way when the cable comes draping down, it's outside of the safety bars because sometimes the safety bars might be in the way and I just don't want to have to deal with moving those out just to use the pulleys. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna line this up, drill some holes, and we should be good. All right, there's one. Don't know if that's gonna go in at the right angle. That could be tricky. So in order for me to get this bottom pulley to fit, I'm gonna have to tilt the power rack up a little bit just so I can get the drill to drill straight through because otherwise it's just hitting the floor. So I'm gonna just basically just lift it up a little bit, place like a block under it, and then drill through it. So just little learn as we go kind of a thing. I'm just gonna take that weight. There we go. That should give me the space that I need to be able to finish that. There we go. All right. Beautiful. Boom. So now that we got the pulley system set up for the lower cable, we need to do the pulley system for the upper cable. So we're going to start with the eye bolt that goes up top on this side. So one suggestion that I have for you that I'm learning is when you go to get the eye bolt, try to get one that's got a hook that's not completely sealed like this, because you're going to run into trouble when it comes time to put this piece on there because it doesn't fit in between there because there's no gap. So I'm going to have to cut mine or find a way to pry it open. So yeah, so when you're looking for these, try to find one that's not completely sealed like this. It'll just make your life a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I had to do to get this thing bent open. Is I took the nut on here, put it up towards the top, and then put that in my vise, just so that way I can basically hold it down. And then I'm going to use a pry bar, this little sucker here, going through this, and then just twisting to get it to open. And I just kind of go like this, and just kind of go to town. And now that I have a little bit of a gap, I can just pry up against this. There it goes. So now we have a really good to go, simple eye hook. So now I can literally take this, slap it through, and then if I really want to, I can close this off, and then I don't ever have to worry about this thing coming off. Now I just have it in there, and I'm just tightening the vise on it to close that gap up. That way I don't have to worry about that thing coming out. And now that thing isn't going anywhere. So, hell yeah. I need to move this weight out. There we go. So I'm gonna be using a 5/16 drill bit to get this thing through. I'm just gonna go center the beam and give it all she's got. Looks good to me. Alright. So I might have made a little bit of a boo-boo with this thing. Because it's a 5/16 bolt, my washers didn't match up. So for some reason I thought this was a quarter, but it's actually 5/16. So I had to get another washer. And I'm just gonna end up using the nut that it came with. But since it's not a lock nut, I'm gonna use some of this red Loctite just to make sure that it doesn't back off or come loose. The other ones have nylon on them and they don't really back out at all. But if you really wanted to go crazy, you could put this on all of it, but I'm only putting it up on this one, so use at your own discretion. So we'll just run the bolt through. Luckily it pretty much holds itself up there. Plop a washer on there and then plop a nut. For the nut, I'm just going to put a little bit of this here thread sealer on it. And then thread that on there. Alright, that should be on there pretty good. Now just move on to doing the other pulley. So basically all I'm doing now is making sure that this pulley is lined up with the swivel pulley up there. And we're just going to mount this one up here, and then we should have our top pulley figured out. So the top one's obviously a lot easier than the bottom one. But they're both pretty simple, so we're just going to drill these holes and get it in there. There's one. There's two. Well, it looks like we got it a little bit cockeyed, but I'm not too worried about it. One question though, where did they ever come up with the name cockeyed? It's a really weird way of describing things. But anyway, on to the next step. So all I'm going to do is take my wrench and socket and tighten all these pulleys down.
Nope.
So unfortunately, it looks like what I'm going to have to do to get these things bolted in is I'm going to need a set of vice grips and some pliers to be able to get the pulley out so I can fit a socket in there to tighten these bolts down. Because otherwise they're just going to keep spinning. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to clamp it, pull the pin, pull the pulley, then we'll just mount everything up nice and tight and call it a day as far as that goes. Then we'll move on to doing the cables. So all we're going to do here is just get this vice grip where it's just tight enough. Let's see. There we go. Just enough to hold it tight. That way this pin can come loose. And then we should be able to just pull the pin out, slide this out, and then now when we go to remove the vice grips, this pulley should pop right off. Yep, there it goes. Alright. Found it. So now I'm just going to go tighten that thing up. So I'm just using the 7/16 socket and wrench. Depending on the hardware you're using, it might be different, but if you're using the same 1/4 inch, it's probably going to be similar. Alright, there we go. We should be good. Thing's nice and solid, and I'm just going to repeat that same process for the rest of the pulleys. So I'll see you in a bit so we can start on the cables. So reassembly is the same thing as disassembly, it's just in opposite directions. So I didn't think about that, but yeah, it's pretty much all there is to it. So if you notice on this pin, there's this little keyway. So when you're going to line it up inside the housing, you need to make sure it's lined up with that. In this, it's going to be straight up. Basically, you're just going to take your wheel, plop it in there, make sure you line up the hole with the pin. Once you get it in there, you'll feel it go. It'll click almost. Yeah, there we go. So it's all the way through. So then all we got to do is take our vice grips just to hold it together. And then now we put our locking pin into the other pin. There we go. All right. So now it's on there. We can take this off. And it's still smooth. So should be good to go. I'm going to do that same exact thing on the rest of these pulleys. And then we'll pick up where we left off with the cables. So before we can go anywhere, we need to load this cable through all the pulleys. Just so that way we can actually get this thing set up properly on the other side. So I'm just going to do that real quick, and then we'll move on to doing the clamps. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take this, we're going to wrap this around like this, and then with this excess here, all we're going to do is take our clamps, and we're going to clamp it together with 3 of them. So I'm going to do that real quick. So for this part here, we're just going to hold it kind of tight. I'm going to take the U-bolt part, we're gonna run that through, and then we're gonna take the other clamp part, which would be this piece here, and we're just gonna take that and put it through. And then, after we have that, we're just gonna take our 2 little nuts and pop them on there. So this thing is on here just hand tight. All I have is just the 1 piece on there, but all we're gonna do is put 2 more here, and then we'll crank these down with some wrenches, and then we should have a good loop right through here. So then this piece will be able to swoop in right on top of here, and then we got a good connection. So I'm just gonna do that real quick, and then we'll move on to measuring our cuts. All right, so for these, I'm just using the Gutentite method. Basically, we just get it Gutentite. And the one big, most important thing is when you're tightening these down is to make sure they're equal. So if you look here, you'll see that these threads are equal. So that's a good way to tell, is just count the threads and make sure that they're the same. Because otherwise you're gonna have one side pulling more than the other. You want them to be even, you want it to be tight, but this is solid and it shouldn't be going anywhere. So we should be good to go with these. Okay, so the way I have this set up is that loading pin is sitting right flush on the 4x4 post. Because most likely when you add weight on top of it, that's where it's gonna hit. So I'm using that as the stopping point. And then I'm just gonna measure enough room to where we can wrap this around and get 3 clamps on it. So we don't want there to be a lot of space, so when we go to pull this, we want it to start engaging pretty much right away. So we'll see if that's right, but that should be pretty close right there. So I think that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna mark this spot. I'm gonna cut probably just a little bit below. All right, that should be about it. And then we'll go get this thing cut. Okay, so I obviously got all my stuff set up. I'm just gonna get this going. All I'm gonna do is put this thing in a vise just to hold it. I've got my mark, and we're just gonna use a cutoff wheel. Got it. We're just gonna use a cutoff wheel and basically just chop this thing down. So let's get it done. All right, it looks like we got a good piece here. It's nice and cut. Looks pretty good, I think. So we're just gonna go put this in there, give it a test fit, and then we'll measure for the second one. And I'll be sure to give you guys these dimensions down in the description, so no worries. All right, moment of truth. You know what they say, measure twice, cut once. Or in my case, you measure 100 times, and you still have to cut 100 times because you just screwed up anyway. Well, let's see if we got it right this time. All right, so I just measured it. This cable here is 10 feet. 2 inches, and that gives me just enough play to go between here with this, and I have a little bit of slack on the other side so I can kind of adjust the cable to fit where I want it, because I want the loading pin to be just flush, basically either sitting on the 4x4 or on the ground, somewhere around there. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my carabiner, we're going to pop it through there, and then put a clamp on it. So now all I got to do is I got to get this thing real close here, just enough to where we can get 3 clamps. This should be enough to get it on there. So I'm gonna do that real quick and tighten these puppies down. Yes, redundancy. What would we do without it? So all we need to do is do the same exact thing I did here, but on this side. The only difference is we're gonna be going down to the bottom. So other than that, this thing on this side should be pretty well set up, and it feels pretty good. Now, if these things are squeaking at all, you may have to use a little lube, but these sound pretty good. Cool. So I've got a little tip. One thing when you're assembling these, just use 1 clamp just for test fitting. It makes it easier than having to do 3 when you're going to adjust, because you can see I had to move this a little bit to fit properly, but I'm glad that I did. So that's sitting flush on the back of that piece, so I need to make sure that I have enough room to curl this thing and attach to it. So I'm gonna go somewhere around here, and I'm just making a mark. I'm not actually cutting. I just wanna cut through the nylon so I can see it when I go to cut this. Now we'll just run this back through, and we should be ready to go make our cuts. Alright, so now I got the slack taken out on that side. I adjusted it. For this cable, it was about 200 inches, or I think that equals like 16 feet, 8 inches, somewhere around there. And it gave me enough adjustment to where I can kind of move it around to get it basically where I want it. So now I'm just going to put the carabiner on this side, put 3 clamps, tighten it up, finish up the 3 clamps over there. And then the only thing left we have to do is going to be putting these spacers on, but I'll get to those when I get to them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use these little bolts and the little spacers, and we're going to use this to basically help guide the rope. and keep this cable from slipping out, especially down on the lower one, because the lower one's kind of more prone to it just because it has to wrap all the way around. So we're gonna pop this in there real quick, and then we should be pretty much good to go. So here's how we're gonna do this, because see, it wants to come out the side here like this. It wants to like whip out. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna run the bolt through there like that. We're gonna put the spacer on top like this, and then we're just gonna put a nut on this side just to kind of keep it in place. Okay, so it's in there real good. It can't slide out either way, so that's gonna help secure that. So now it's only gonna come out the top where we want it, so we're good. So as it turns out, I only needed one of these spacers and bolts. So if anything, you get to save a little bit of money, and I got to make another trip to the store to do another return. But really, the only thing left to do now is to put these cables to the test. So let's get to it.
Girls with their nails done.
Oh yeah, brother. Sweet. It's pretty nice if you ask me. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, it's been so long since I've been able to do these. The life of owning glasses. Oh man, they never want to stay on your face. Man, I really like having these safety bars here. It gives you something to grip onto. But it feels really good. These things are really smooth. Oh yeah, brother. Feels real good, yeah. Ooh, I like the pump, yeah.
I think the girls with their nails done.
Yeah, brother, yeah. Well, that was one hell of a workout. I'm really happy with these things. They worked really well. The only thing that I might change is change out the D-links with some carabiners to where we put the weights. I just think they're a little bit easier, they're a little bit quicker, but I wanted to show you both. They're about the same price, but that way you have an option for which one you want. But if you haven't already, like the video, consider subscribing because I got a lot more content coming. It's not all fitness. I also do a lot of automotive stuff. But no matter what it is, it's going to be fun. We're going to learn. We're going to have a good time. Anyway, I hope you all have a great day. I'll be sure to catch you in the next one. And just remember, keep it nice and easy. See ya.